You're about to listen to an archived episode of The Night Shift with Zeno Horoman. This is brought to you commercial-free by the Surfcast Podcast. If you're interested in more historical, educational, and entertaining surf fishing content, check out weekly episodes of the Surfcast Podcast available today on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you get your podcasts, including www.surfcastpodcast.com.
It's my pleasure to introduce Henry Gilbey. He is a guide, a photographer, a world traveler, and he's coming from UK. So this is a special treat for all our listeners. Henry, welcome to the Night Shift Podcast.
Hey, Zeno, thank you so much for having me. Seriously, I love this podcast, and I'm not blowing smoke either. I was listening to you yapping to Bill Wetzel the other day when I was taking my youngest girl to her running training, which obviously I don't do. You can tell by the shape of me.
So same.
No, so thank you very much. Seriously, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's great. Listen, we actually, people don't know, but we actually met in Providence, right? You were there repping the, was it, what brand was it? The one that you worked with now, Savage Gear, right?
It was actually Fish, the French brand. We were, they're really cool people based in Northwest France. And we were kind of looking to learn as much as possible about the US market and the striped bass market. But I don't actually know where they've gone now with, entry into the US. But I said, guys, look, I think we should go to some striped bass shows because I think it'd be cool to meet all the people and talk. And yes, we ended up at that show in Providence.
Yeah, no, that was pretty cool. Now, did you ever fish for striped bass in the United States or no?
Yeah, I know I have. Under the guises of, I can call it work, I think. I had to go to research. No, yes. Look, I've got a proper obsession with your stripers. I've fished a few times in Cape Cod, the canal. I've done a bit on the boat. We had a really cool few days up. What's the northernmost tip of Cape Cod?
Provincetown, P-Town.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. We had a cool couple of days. I mean, the boat fishing was great, but I'm a shore fisherman by trade. So I've done a bit in the canal. A really, really kind local lad has just helped us out hugely and put me onto a couple of fish, which was, it's pretty mind-blowing. The first time I ever went for stripers, I mean, when I say it was a disaster, where would I go? Went to Martha's Vineyard, which was cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this just, I think these people thought we'd just turn up and magically find striped bass. And it got to about day 2 or 3, and I've got to be honest, I lost my temper. And I said, Jesus, this ain't going to happen, boys. I said, when in Rome, we know what we're doing. We know where to go and when. I said, you can't just rock up on some random coastline and find striped bass.
Just like any rock is going to hold fish. Just go and cast, yeah.
I think the view was, oh my God, there's stripers everywhere. All you got to do is turn up and whack a lure out. So I lost my temper, dropped those guys, and actually ended up meeting a couple of Brits. And we had a fantastic couple of sessions because they'd been doing their research. I went blind as the photographer, but I worked out, if I don't catch a fish, I've got no pictures. So that's my introduction. But yeah, look, it's in another life. I don't do regrets at all. I love my life. I love my family. Love where I live. But if I knew what I know now, let's say, I'm 48. So if I knew what I know now 30 years ago, I'd have moved to the US and given my life over to striped bass. Make no mistake.
Wow, that's a big statement. Where do you live now? You live in Cornwall, right?
Yeah, Cornwall. I live in southwest UK, basically about as far away from London as I can get.
Yeah, I see that on the map. It's just across from France, basically there. You can swim over.
Yeah, because distance. I love it over here when someone says, "Oh God, I've done this really long journey. I drove for an hour and a half." I think, oh my God, go to the States. You could drive for 10 hours and you're still on the same road.
Hour and a half. We got 5 hours to go fish a few hours and go back.
We have no concept of distances here in the UK. So yes, if I got in a car now, I could hit the outskirts of London in about 4 hours.
Now, your main fishery, like you are a guide and photographer and you fished around the world. So the fact that you like striped bass so much, it's kind of telling. Not that striped bass is a special fish, but if you're a surfcaster, it's like a magical fish that's inshore. Obviously, if you're a tuna guy, you got to buy a boat. There's no other way unless you travel to Australia. And you have traveled all around the world with your photography and doing all that stuff. Now, your main fishery in UK is a sea bass, right? A European sea bass.
Yes, look, my addiction and what a lot of guys and girls love to do is, we fish. We only have one species of bass.
Okay.
So we call them bass. Whereas the chefs like to call them sea bass because the general public can't get their head around eating bass. They have to eat sea bass. So we have no freshwater bass in the UK. They do get the largemouth bass down in southern Spain and parts of France, etc. So we fish for bass, which is I suppose it's the European saltwater bass.
Well, it's funny because when you don't fish for species, the only way you know the name is in a store when you buy it. Think about it. Yeah. So, you go like it's Chilean sea bass. No, it's not. That's just a name that they came up because the original name's too ugly. Same thing with European bass. It's Branzino in over there and it's sea bass over here. Yeah. It's the same species of fish. Not my point, but my question is like, how is it similar or different to striped bass?
So the parallels between our fishery and your fishery are extraordinary. I mean, look, our bass, I love our bass more than life itself, but they are not, they're not big fish. If I caught one bass over 10 pounds this year, I am a legend in my own lunchbox.
Right.
It's, we love them, but they're not big fish, but it's about the fishing to me. It's about I know you guys love the surf casting, the estuaries, the wandering around, the moving, the thinking. And our ways of fishing, I have to say, for bass in saltwater is so like what I see you guys doing. But obviously you guys have to scale up because you are generally targeting bigger fish. I will use a rod. For example, I was fishing earlier on today, obviously researching lures. I was using a 9-foot rod, which is rated to about 1.5 ounces. Okay. That would be my standard kind of everyday bass rod. I'm not going to hit a bass that might weigh 30 or 40 pounds.
Right.
Whereas I know you guys don't do it every day of the week, but if you were to go, I don't know, let's say you obviously Montauk or Cape Cod Canal, right, and you got to throw a 4-ounce pencil popper, and you might connect with a 40-pound fish. So it's a scale thing, but the way we do a lot of our fishing, and with what I know about your fishery, which isn't much, but I know a little bit, the parallels are extraordinary. And I'd love to. That's why partly I'd love to spend more and more time in your awesome country. Obviously, because of the fishing and the people and the place, but I'd love to take more of what I do and apply it to your fishing, and then learn more about your fishing and bring it back to my fishing. If that makes sense.
So, what would you, from what you do, apply to our fishing, or what could we learn from you guys?
Oh, that's another. Well, what could you learn from us guys? Crumbs, apart from how to drink.
Well, I mean, that question doesn't have to be as it sounds, like learning.
No.
I'm saying is, what do you guys do that you don't hear us do? I think that's a better way of putting it.
I think we are increasingly highly developed with soft plastics, fishing a lot of them weightless. If you go back 15 years in my fishery, when I first started getting into it, it wasn't so advanced. And I think we've taken a lot of influences from France, from Japan, from America, and then sort of mixed them in with our fishing. So we fish a lot of soft plastics, a lot of surface lures. I suppose it's a much lighter approach. Our surf fishing is very much like yours, but again, smaller lures. I don't know what we could. I'm genuinely amazed. When I used to be a big time bait fisherman, and I yeah, and I would catch bass by mistake, and I thought back then that people obsessed about bass were really weird. I thought, what's the freaking point? But then, by hook or by crook, I started to get into the whole lure fishing thing, and then it forces your hand, because if the wind's blowing a certain direction, my coastline's going to be blown out, so I've got to go and find clear water, or I've got to find an estuary. I had no idea 15 years ago. I had no idea that there were so many different ways to fish for one species. I thought it was sling a bait out on a storm beach, and now I feel almost like a hunter, I suppose. No, I'm not. I don't shoot, but I'm tracking.
Yeah, but
these fish.
there's a part of hunting in this whole thing.
Yeah, big time.
You need
Big
to
time.
apply different techniques. Like it's almost like you said, it forces your hand. You can't just do whatever you want all the time. Sometimes the condition's going to tell you what exactly you have to do, and you have to figure this out. Yeah. Unless you have somebody that tells you. At that point, you're a very lucky guy.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I find I find your fishery so interesting because you are fishing for a true migratory species, aren't you? Which our bass are not migratory. They will move off in the winter generally, but they're not a migratory species as such. And obviously, you can and do tend to connect with bigger fish. I know your fishery goes up and down, like all fisheries do, with commercial pressure, etc., etc. But it fascinates me how it's a scale. If we had 30-pound bass, it'd be great, but we don't. So we love our fish. But I don't see a fishery any sort of better or worse because of the size of the fish. It just fascinates me, the parallels between, I see you guys talking about pencil poppers, and I'm using a very similar kind of surface lure, but smaller. I see your guys talking about, like 9-inch sluggos, and I'm using, say, a 5-inch.
Yeah, like a sand. Is that your predominant bait? Is a sand eel in those spots?
You've said the one word, Zeno, which I find almost the most fascinating about your fishery. When I was listening to you and Bill Wetzel the other day, you almost, and I love the stories, but I reckon you two talked about bait more than you talked about your target species, stripers. And that fascinates me because it's always from day one of me, hearing about your fish and learning a bit about your fishery, it seems that you guys are far more dialed in on your different bait species. Bill was talking about the migration patterns of pogies or Manhattan, wherever it was. I'm going, what? Yes, I like to think I know what bass feed on, but in reality, I'm going out, like where I went today, I'm not really sure if they're feeding on herring or crab or sand eel. I don't know. Maybe because our bass aren't migratory, and when they're inshore, they tend to be inshore for long periods.
Or maybe you're just giving us too much credit, and we're just bullshitting and thinking that we know what they're feeding on.
I do. Sometimes I think, my God,
Brian, trust me.
Yeah, no, I don't know the migratory patterns of a sand eel. I wish I did. But genuinely, I guess because your fish are constantly on the move after different bait sources, I get the impression our bass will come in on conditions and be inshore, and generally they'll be in on, let's say, sand eel and then mackerel later in the year, and then when they come into the estuaries, I get the impression they're feeding on crab a lot, and shrimp and prawn, etc., the big kind of lazier fish. But I would say in general, and I'm not blowing smoke, and I know we all talk a bit of crap in fishing, obviously, but I'm always fascinated me how much I hear you guys talking about bait.
Well, I think first of all we have a lot of bait here, different baits, but it just almost sounds the same as you guys. I mean, when you're thinking about it, it's mackerel, it's sand eels, the ocean baits. Then you have your inshore stuff like the crab and shrimp. And the thing is that once you get past spring, you have all these different hatches that happen throughout the year. So you're starting with the shrimp hatch or worm hatch, and then the sand eels are small and they get bigger, or menhaden is small, they get big. So as it progresses through the year, you have these different baits that they're feeding on. But I don't think these are like exotic shit that comes from Florida. This is the stuff that happens every year. It probably on a smaller scale where you are, but it's probably the same type of hatching that goes on throughout the year. Now, what fascinates me is what you just said. Something you said, like, you don't know if your bass feeds on mackerel. Your bass are 10 pounds of big fish. How big are these mackerels that they feed on?
Look, our bass are like your bass. They got big mouths. I mean, you can get you can get a bass feeding on a 1 pound mackerel easily.
So you have found big mackerels in their stomachs. They will eat them.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, look, you talk to the boat guys. 100%. They will fish. They will fish live mackerel, and these bass will engulf them without any problem at all.
Do they feed any different on lures when they zone in on a bait that big in the surf?
Look, most I think our surf fishing with lures has the potential to go a few different ways, if that makes sense. I think I get the impression when our bass are in the surf feeding, I don't feel they're on mackerel because it doesn't. I think it would be. I guess it would be sand eels because sand eels are off. Obviously sand eels are off the sand. So I don't get the impression they're in on mackerel then, but I do often wonder in our surf fishing. There's a few guys I'm aware of who are almost taking sort of like a slight striped bass approach, i.e. trying to get bigger lures on bigger rods out there, but I'm not yet hearing of a huge amount of success doing it.
Well, that makes sense because, I mean, there's a little bit of a ceiling there, or how big can you go? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you wanted to go with, like, I don't know, let's just exaggerate, 14-foot rod and an 11-inch lure, your success, it's going to be very, very limited. But I'm curious about, so you guys, like these bass that you guys fishing on, I mean, they obviously, for those of you that don't know, they look like striped bass. They're just a smaller version of it, and they are delicious, first of all. If that's what you like to, for the eating purposes. Most of them that come to America are farmed in cages. Actually, believe it or not, where I'm from in Croatia, on the island that I live in, they have 3 gigantic cages where they got most of the tuna and sea bass that they export out to Japan and to the United States. So these are farm-raised fish, but they're raised in salt water. But when you guys are fishing for them, like, how close to the beach are they? Like, how far does your cast has to be?
Oh look, this is what fascinates me. This is what I never foresaw getting into this fishing. I had bass last year that literally, I'm not exaggerating, they literally ate the lure off my rod tip. You're kind of early morning, really early morning, if the beach is lovely and quiet. I don't know if you ever scream, you get a fish sort of hit you off your rod tip. Sometimes they'll hit you 80 yards out, and sometimes they'll hit you really, really close in. They will move into incredibly shallow water.
Do you have, now you guys are using smaller rods, right? Maybe what is it? What is a big rod? 9, 10?
Well, I would say the average lure rod in the UK is probably going to be 9 foot. Okay. 9.6 is very popular.
Okay, but it's a lot more sensitive than ours because 9 would be probably medium heavy, and you guys are going to go light because your lures are light.
But we tend to like pretty fast, very responsive, quite pokey rods. Whereas I remember the first or second time I went over and we fished the Cape Cod Canal, the only rod I had that was really capable was a Japanese shore jigging rod. Okay. And it would land the freaking Titanic. But 3 hours of casting a 4-ounce pencil pop, I got it out there and I had fish, but my freaking shoulders were,
Listen, I got it.
I like a fast rod. And then Bull lent me, he said, have a go. And he had this lovely kind of Shimano, I can't remember what it was called, but it's a specialist Shimano surf casting rod. Right. Oh my God, my shoulder was singing. It was just, it was lovely.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. So a few years ago, Penn, when it was still a Penn, they invited me to go to Costa Rica with them. This was for Christmas about 4 or 5 years ago. And all the writers from all around the world were there. I had no idea why they asked me. I just was like, yes, I am coming, right?
Just go. Yeah.
So there I am. And I got to meet Patrick Sabile. And Patrick was on the boat with me, both days. But the thing is Patrick is also a caster. He doesn't want live bait. He doesn't want marlin. He's a caster. This is where he developed all these lures. The problem is they gave us these 6-foot rods with like a 7,000 reel that can handle a Cubera, but for casting, dude, we were on the front of the boat. I was there for like 8 hours. Well, they were trolling live bait. My shoulder, when I got back, they're like, "What time are you coming to dinner?" I said, "I don't want the dinner. I just want beer. Where is beer? I am not interested." I mean, so my point is with wrong tackle, even a quality tackle, it's going to kill you. It's really going to kill you. So, okay, so you guys are using a 9-foot rod. And I know that, the sand deals, I don't know if you know the history, and it's not really a history, but the sand deals, what are they called? Red gills, right? They came from the U.S.
Yeah.
They were popular here in the 80s, 90s when the sand deals was so big. And then eventually they kind of slacked off, and then they got started imported again. And that's one of your brands. That's one of your UK brands, I assume. So we're kind of familiar with it, and we have the sand deals also. But you guys almost, to me, seem like you do a lot of finesse fishing with those 9-foot rods. Is it just because, I don't know, it's not a lead head thing. It's a weightless thing most of the time, right?
Yeah, look, it just completely depends on where you're fishing. I mean, if I'm fishing,
I should have known that. I mean, seriously.
No, but yeah,
I got you.
I'll, you know what I mean. Ultra shallow, reefy, kind of broken ground. I'll fish a, I don't know, weightless paddle tail or whatever. And then if I'm bumping an estuary in fast current, I'll tend to bump the bottom. Or surface lures or whatever. But I interest you talk about. I saw when I was last over in the Cape Cod Canal. When the world was normal and we could travel. I remember seeing quite a few of those, those Savage Gear sand eels, the big, they were jigging the bottom, which I can't pretend is, I'm not sure it's a kind of fishing that appeals to me, fishing really heavy kind of, I'd rather fish those pencil poppers. That was fun.
Listen, I don't jig. It's too hard with my shoulder, and I screwed up my shoulder a few years ago. Anyway, so to me, I respect it. It's just not something that I do.
Yeah. But I do with our rods, our rods tend to be lighter and more responsive. We're fishing lighter lures. We're targeting much smaller fish. But I'll be interested to see in your market if they're ever. I think the Japanese make some incredible rods. In my world, we take a lot of influence from them, I suppose. I find enough, I get a few emails from America, especially on the West Coast, from striper guys saying, "Oh, Henry, what do you think about this Japanese rod?" They seem to be switching on to some of the Japanese lure rods. And I wonder in your field on the East Coast, would it ever go that way at all? I don't see why it would, but I wonder if it might.
I don't know why, for whatever reason, the Japanese brands are not that popular on the East Coast. This includes the lures. When I go to Croatia, obviously, you see a big influence of Japanese squid jigs and all kinds of lures and all kinds of rods. We don't see them here. It's mostly Korean, Chinese. So I don't really see any Japanese. And they tend to be expensive. I was
just about to say, I think cost is a big issue.
Yes, I believe they are always positioned as a high end. Having said that, when you think about it, the best reels by far are, the Shimano's Daiwa. We're talking about a higher end stuff. That's a almost like machine precision.
Yes.
Unfortunately, what we do for surf fishing, the Van Stol is much more better suited for having, taking a dive, because if you fish a Cape Cod Canal, I know that everybody I spoke to, they either fish the Shimano's or Daiwa, high speed reels. You can't do that with the Van Stol, but they are never going to fall in the water and they're never going to get it wet. So it works great for them. But I got to tell you something. There's another thing. It's like when we go to Mexico to chase after rooster fish. First year I brought a Van Stol. After about 3-4 hours, I was like, give me another reel. I'm going to die with this thing.
Really?
It's so slow. Well, it's so slow.
Yeah, okay.
You want something that, those fish, they don't want anything slow. They chase fish through the waves. They don't ambush. There's nowhere to ambush. It's just surf. It's wide open surf. So they chase the shit out of down everything. Well, if you can't work your lure that fast, they just don't want to look at it. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can catch fish doing slow and all that. But for the most part, that's what we were doing. And I really got exhausted trying to do that. But now, does your bass feeds primarily at night? Or is there fishery at night in England? Because everything that I see is mostly daytime.
Look, we do a lot of daytime fishing, Zeno. We really do. But I don't know how many years ago, if I said there were a couple of lads, a lot of people, what fishing's like, people claim they were doing this before the Romans came over.
Of course they did, yes.
But there were a couple of boys in Jersey, which is one of the Channel Islands, which is very near France. A couple of lads there who did a bit of striped bass fishing, and then basically they thought, hang on, surely we can do the same for our bass at night.
Not Julian, is it Julian?
A lad called Keith White.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I remember him. Sure, absolutely.
And I give the guy huge credit because I know he was catching all these fish at night, and no one believed him. They just took the piss out of them. And then a few years ago now, I went to Jersey I think I was photographing a new lure rod or something he was developing, and he said, "Come out night fishing." You know, I was with my camera. I wasn't fishing; I was just taking pictures. I remember sitting there, and it was pissing with rain about 11 o'clock at night, waiting for it to get dark, and I thought, what in the hell is going on? And then they had 17 or 18 fish, and I thought, Jesus. But the problem was I didn't fish, I was taking pictures. So it wasn't until a few years later when a friend of mine in Ireland, I go to Ireland a lot, said, Henry, you got to crack this night fishing thing. It will change your fishing. Because like you, I don't know, when my coastline goes very calm and very clear, it's awful for bass fishing in the daytime.
Of course.
But when we're having a bit of a weird year this year so far, but when the fishing is, when I go to Ireland a lot when the world is normal. When it goes flat, calm and crystal clear, we either go for estuaries or we stay the hell away from the coastline in the daytime. But you know far better than I do. Nighttime comes in, it's a complete game. Night fishing with lures has completely changed my bass fishing.
But this is then what you're telling me is almost a new development. I'm not saying yesterday's, but I'm saying in the last 20, 30 years.
I think I'm sure there have been people doing it. Of course they were. I'm sure they weren't keeping it quiet or they weren't communicating it. It was the lads in Jersey who chose to communicate about it very openly. And the people who then listened and adopted it were like, hang on, bloody hell, this works. Flat calm conditions, I'm not saying always flat calm, but the conditions I despise in the daytime, I go out in the middle of the night on the right tide and it's changed my fishing because it's another, here's another string to my bow. I can go fishing at times I didn't really think I could. I'm
sure your wife is thrilled about that.
Oh, she loves it, especially when I set the alarm. especially when I set the alarm for 2. I'm a bad sleeper anyway. Especially when I set the alarm for 2 a.m. And then stub my toe on the end of the bed, get into my fishing gear. She loves it.
Dude, by the time we get to be our age, with you and I about the same age, they're just happy when we go. They're like, please go, please just go.
Yeah, there is never any stress in my household about me going fishing.
I agree. Same here.
And I love my wife more than life itself, and she's a very cool girl. But there is no stress apart from when I wake up in the middle of the night because I stub my toe and my alarm goes off.
Just don't wake them. Like, don't ruin their sleep. Yeah. Other than that, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, She thinks I'm freaking mad, but that's the way it goes.
No, but I mean, seriously, that when you think about it in context, like we tend to look everything in context of our lives, okay, yes. which is kind of normal. But if you took that 20 or 30 years and you look back last 100 years, now I'm not saying no one fished, but most of the people didn't. Now, let's say your kids' generation. It's going to be something that's accepted. My dad fished at night all the time. What are you talking about? Yeah, but before him, not many people have. So in a context of what we live in through, it looks normal, but it's really a fairly new event for you guys to fish at night. I don't know when it happened in the United States, but I can tell you when I grew up in Croatia, A, no one fished at night. B, no one fished with lures.
Yes.
Okay. It was a bait thing 99% of the time or net, and it was sustainability. It wasn't a matter of going for sport. It was you caught it, you ate it, and that was the end of that one.
Yeah.
So these are all new things.
The problem, my God, so I want to ask you so many questions about your fishing. But I know that's probably for another podcast because I find what you guys do fascinating, and I love the mix between us guys. I've got about 50,000 questions to ask you, but I know I can't at the moment.
Well, you can. We're gonna set up a podcast where you're gonna interview me. How about that?
No, seriously, because
I don't have a problem with it.
No, because I love what with our fishing. I really enjoy trying to figure out in fishing what floats people's boats, and I love the fact that what is totally normal to you might be completely alien to me, and then what I might do totally normally, you think, oh, hang on, there might be some crossover. But I love this whole kind of night fishing subculture that it's now. It's perfectly normal to wander around the coastline. I love being out there, sort of 3 a.m, 2 a.m. Every normal person is in bed, fast asleep.
Well, this is why I kind of think
I love it
that you keep saying normal. There's nothing normal about us.
Yes, but I think we think we're normal.
Yeah, keep thinking that.
Yeah, yes, yeah, it's okay as long as we think we're normal. But
yeah, we're good.
My folks, my kids, my wife, they think I'm freaking gone in the head. You know what it's like. You're suffering from lack of sleep, and obviously. I don't know about you. I occasionally get a little bit bad tempered when I'm overtired. And yeah, they think we're mad, but I love it. I love that what we do, we take as it's just what we do. It's our lives. I can't imagine a life that doesn't revolve around being able to go fishing kind of almost when I want. A life without that to me is a life not really worth being around.
Let me ask you something, and I'm going to amuse you with whatever questions you have. But you guys use needlefish, which is something that's popular here and everybody can relate to. And this is a new development, right? More or less?
Yeah, again, look, mate, I mean,
everything is new, more or less, but you know what I'm saying.
I'll give Keith over in Jersey again. I give him 100% credit for needlefish. You gotta understand a lot of I don't know how it works in your fishing, the striped bass scene, but when we I would say when we tend to get into bass fishing, or we seem to like lures that do a lot. They jingle, they jangle, they flash, and they this, that, whatever. I think it takes a lot of experience and a lot of confidence to trust a lure that's basically doing nothing.
No hooks.
Yeah, a no action lure. So when I was first introduced to a needlefish, I thought, Jesus, this ain't gonna work, is it? I just couldn't get my head round not be able to feel on my rod tip. I thought, and then the guys, obviously you know what a Senko is from your freshwater bass fishing world. We started fishing white Senkos at night. This bloke said, Henry, you got to try it. So I'm whacking it out. I can't feel a freaking thing. Winding in, thinking, what's the point? Bang, bass. And it's just, I can still remember that first fish on a Senko, a no action soft plastic at night. If you'd had a microphone by my head, you would have heard the cogs of my brain just going. It's just completely, and again, like night fishing, it changed my fishing. That I can trust lures like a needlefish. I can trust lures at certain times that I suppose we think they're doing nothing, but they're doing enough for the fish.
Well, yeah, I find actually, believe it or not, and I know some people this is going to sound strange, but needlefish to me is one of the most versatile plugs that you can use because you can do so much with it. I understand people want something that somebody else designed, some kind of a lip for them to does the. But I can drag that thing through the sand crawling, or I can work it on the top like a pencil popper, or I can do a lot with it. I can stop. I can not. You can't do that with something that has a lip that's designed to be retrieved at a certain speed. So to me, the needlefish is the most important bag lure in my bag, especially at night. I do have to say that the confidence is a big deal when it comes to needlefish. Because
100%,
right, if you don't have it, you're going to have a very hard time, and you're going to just go right back to what it works. But boy, once you have it, I always said that and a bucktail is almost an extension of my hand. Go ahead.
Sorry, your bucktails. I know very, very little about bucktails, and they, from our point of view, I think we look at them as a lure that you'd bump around on the bottom. But you're not bumping them on the bottom, are you?
I rarely let my touch bottom. Rarely ever.
I find this. I think I'm aware of a few guys catching a few bass on bucktails, but you guys, it seems to be a science. It's an art, isn't it? I mean, it is. It's a whole.
I think spots where bucktails are most effective, believe it or not, are the nastiest spot where you're going to lose most of your shit. Okay, rocks.
Really?
in between the rocks, and you say to yourself, I'm never going to throw a lead head in there because, if I don't pay attention to it for 1 second, I just lost that thing. Okay. But I like Montauk is all rocks. Cuttyhunk is all rocks. Martha's Vineyard is all rocks. The bucktails are just ridiculously effective there. But you don't work them the same way as you would work them, let's say, in an inlet, which inlet is generally sand. Yes. Okay, so you would cast them up current, let it go to the bottom, and then what you really wanted to. Okay, so no one can explain this shit to you. Okay, you have to kind of figure this out on your own. Like no one's going to tell you retrieve at 1 turn per second. Like you're going to figure out how fast you got to throw up current, and this is going to change depending how the current changes during the tide. I'm talking about fishing the inlets, right?
Yes.
Where when you're fishing wide open spots that are really nasty because they're rocky, that you have to put your line on a reel as the bucktail hits the water. Like you don't have the luxury of casting, having 2 cigarettes and smoking to your buddy, and you need to pay attention. It's an automatic thing, right? You stick your finger out, start reeling. So you don't want that bucktail on, and then you're going to retrieve it generally in the wave itself.
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to have a surf coming in. When you fish in the breachway, it's usually on the inside of the inlet, so you no longer have the surf. The surf is no real. Now you're fishing the bottom of the column. With this, you're fishing the middle of the column. So it's a different application. Both of them deadly, though.
What do you think you're trying to imitate when you're fishing?
Everything.
Really?
Everything. I don't care. Okay. That squid shit is bullshit. That doesn't work.
So, okay. So if you when you're fishing your bucktail over really gnarly, bouldery ground,
right?
Why would you ever consider, for example, just because the way I would fish that kind of ground, okay, would you ever consider fishing a big paddle tail on a jig head, rigged weedless?
We do, but they don't cast as well. A bucktail, you can get away with a smaller lead and a bigger trailer, which gives you similar profile. Where if you wanted to make that in a rubber, it would be 7 inches and weight 4 ounces.
Yeah, granted. Point taken.
But you can get away with 1 ounce lead head and a 7-inch pork rind, and you still have a 7-inch silhouette, but only with 1.5 ounces of weight.
Okay,
so because the rubber adds a lot of weight.
Yeah, and it kills your distance as well.
Right, and I think the paddle tails are awesome. I love paddle tails, but I think they top out around 6 inches, 5 to 6 inches in the surf. I'm talking in the boulder fields. Okay, now in the sand, you can throw a foot and just drag it through the sand. It's not going to get stuck. You're not going to catch a lot of fish either. But so but my point is that you getting to the limits of aerodynamics and weight when you're talking about paddle. Think about this too. Like you can, and I know this is a podcast, so I can't explain it, but you'll understand what I'm saying. Is if you took a bucktail, right, and you have a bucktail, and if you shave the head of it 45-degree angle from where you tie it, now that head is not going to get stuck on the rocks anymore because it's going to want to always plane up. So now you can go with a bigger weight, so you can get more distance, but you're still not going to get stuck on the bottom. Well, you can't do this with rubber because you have to put more rubber, which kills your distance.
But is that distance you want because the fish are a long way out, or because you want to cover a lot of ground?
That really, it's one of those macho shit where I just want to cast as far as I can.
You are so honest.
Come on, dude. Really, sometimes it depends. Like, okay, here, you have an example. Like I know, we. Okay, let me just backtrack here because this fishing the storm shit doesn't really work everywhere. Some guys want, like in Massachusetts, they want flat, little bit of a chop. Forget the Cape Cod Canal, which is a separate special situation. But for the most part, they like a little bit chop. So, like you said, it's not too clear. Okay, and they want a calm condition so they can throw the eels and needlefish. You go to guys on Montauk who live on a nor'easter of 40 miles an hour. It's a totally different fishery for the same fish, but a totally different way of fishing. And one guy likes one guy likes another. Doesn't make it right or wrong. Where I'm going with this is that when you're fishing 30, 40 miles an hour in your face wind, you need something small enough to penetrate, but not big enough so it gets caught in that wind.
Yes.
Okay, so if you throw anything big, it's going to get caught in the wind. If you throw anything too heavy, it's going to get stuck on the bottom. So it's almost a dance of trying to figure out the optimal distance and trying to work that thing in. For the most situations, I think, it's almost a math problem between the distance of your bucktail in a trailer and the depth of the water that you're working on.
That's another thing I wanted to ask you was, why are you always fishing with a trailer? Is that to increase the profile of the bucktail?
The thing is, like, some guys, and I've done it once in a while and been successful. Man, you put me on a beach. No, you put me on no. You put me on a beach with a bucktail, no trailer. You might as well take my pants down because I'll feel naked. I'm like, I lose all confidence. I lose all confidence. What the trailer does, it actually increases the size of the profile.
Yes.
It does give it a little fluttering motion. Yes. To me, I know a lot of guys that fish bare bucktails. I've never done well with it. It's a matter of personal preference, but I don't see a lot of guys do. You know how it is. Fishing is like, if you see a guy doing well once, you'll be like, okay, he got lucky. Then you see twice, you pay attention. The third time, you're like, I'm doing that. And I think that's the same thing with bucktails, is that you see a lot of guys using trailers, and every time you try it without a trailer. Now, there are special situations. Again, hard winds, the trailer will cause a drag on your cast.
Yes.
So going a naked bucktail, it's much more, or taking your trailer and cutting it in half just to reduce the drag.
Yes.
So all these things come into play, but for the most part, I much prefer to have a trailer than to have a bare bucktail. But I'm telling you, for your size of fish, I think you guys would crush it on bucktails. But I don't know how much water you guys are fishing, how fast of a current it is. And, because think about this. If you are throwing a bucktail, your main math problem here is how much current and how much depth. Because if you have a current, you can get away with a bigger bucktail, which meaning you're making a longer cast. And the current is going to take it sideways, so it's not going to sink as fast. But if you have a dead, calm, flat water, even if you throw in a half an ounce bucktail, it'll be on the bottom in a hurry. So I don't know exactly what you guys fishing in.
No, that's the thing. We're like you in some respects, but on a much smaller scale. I mean, you've got your whole, well, not the whole East Coast, but a huge. I guess your fishery is it is incredibly varied, isn't it? From the Carolinas up into Canada. You can fish any kind of, and we can. The guy I always joke about. We sometimes we have clients in Ireland who come from. They fish in an area of the UK called Sussex. I'm always banging on about, I love onshore winds. I want a bit of fizz on the water. I love green fizzy water. If they get where they're fishing, if they get a hint of a breeze, their coastline is brown and filthy. They want flat, calm. I'm going, oh, no, I don't want this. And they come to Ireland, they can't believe how clear the water is. So, geographically, that might be 250 miles apart, 200 miles apart, but it might as well be two same species, but two completely different ways of fishing.
Well, I mean, I think on the end of the day, the location trumps anything else that you can throw at it. I mean, if you think about, let's say your high tide is like 3 feet on average by us, and 6 feet on the moon tide, right?
Yeah.
You said so you get a wind and a tide, and you're like, wow, 7 feet, wow, that's a huge tide. And then you go to the Bay of Fundy, and it's 50 feet. I mean, serious. Is it really a big tide? It's so irrelevant, right? I mean, so that I'm trying to make that point. If his water's brown with a little fizz, then you can't tell him, you should really go pound that shit because, the bass, if the bass are not going to come in dirty water, you can't win that game.
So now where you live, how far away are you from the bulk of your fishing?
Well, that really depends. Like, I have Jones Beach here, which is about 10 minutes from my house, 15 minutes. And it's fairly decent waters. But, it almost depends season to season what's the hot spot. Like, the better fishing to me is about an hour away from me. Montauk's about 2 hours away. I don't go that often, but Smith's Point and stuff, it's about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It's better fishing because the water's cleaner. They have more bait because the water's cleaner, and they have more drivable beach. We don't have any drivable beach by us because they don't allow driving on the beach here.
Yeah.
So obviously that's always convenient that you can hit multiple spots where, as you know, if you're with the car, you pick one spot, you're kind of married to it. It's kind of hard to bounce around that much.
Yeah.
So that's and you know how it is. If you have a job, you can only run out hour and a half so many nights a week.
Of course,
you try to find the local spots that work for you, even if they're not as productive. You kind of go get your fix there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And do you ever? I know. Obviously, with the name of the magazine, the name of the podcast, I get the impression that you are obviously beyond passionate about surfcasting. But do you also? I think you do. Do you also put the heavy rods down and pick the lighter gear up and go and work the back bays and the inlets? If
I had a choice, I would fish with a 7-foot rod and a half an ounce bucktail all my life. Listen, I'm at the point in my life that all that wetsuit and swimming through the rocks, 11-foot rods, and I kicked my ass so many times. I had a great time, but 7-foot rod, give me a nice, medium action 7-foot rod and about a 3/4 ounce bucktail where I can flip it in the back bay and catch striped bass up to maybe 15 pounds or weak fish or bluefish. Listen, you catch a 10-pound bluefish on a 7-foot rod, your wrist is going to hurt. Your wife's going to be like, what the hell are you doing with that wrist?
Yeah, you're going to fall on
I enjoy that very much because it's more of a finesse. You almost got that bucktail or the soft plastic is an extension of your hand. And I don't tend to use a lot of lures with that kind of fishing. I'm sorry, a lot of plastic, a lot of pens and poppers. I tend to use a lot of bucktails, a lot of soft plastic. And I love that kind of fishing. I love that kind of fishing. I really do. And this is why I feel like you guys would do well with a bucktails.
Look, I think,
but it's a confidence thing. It's a huge confidence thing.
Yeah, and you know what it's like. I'm sure it happens in your world as well. You get to a level where you're kind of comfortable-ish with what you know, but then someone. For me, it can be someone says something or something happens, and it's like. I don't know about you. I think about fishing about 24 hours a day. I can't help it. It's an addiction. It's pathetic. I cannot.
But it's awesome, dude.
It is cool. As I say, we're normal. But I just
define normal.
Us. No.
Okay.
But no, you know how you think you get to a level, and then something engages your brain. I think, oh, hang on, I could do this different. And I get the impression with bucktails, for us, I know there are guys messing around with it, but I do get the impression with bucktails, we probably have a whole nother, string to our bow to explore and discover, and then almost, bring that method back to us and our fish and our locations and adapt it to better suit us. I'm sure of it, of course.
Listen, does the fly fishing work for bass?
Oh, yeah. A lot of guys fly fish for bass.
Well, then the bucktail's the same thing except with the lead head on. I mean, it's the same thing. It's a fly with a lead head on.
But the problem is I'm not going to sleep tonight now because I'm thinking about freaking bucktails. Oh, Jesus.
Hold on. Listen, can we do 3-way with Bill Wenzel next time?
Oh, I tell you what, I could listen to him. Genuinely, I could listen to him talk all day long. He's fascinating. He cracks me up. He's got great stories. He strikes me like a freaking pocket rocket.
He is a really, really good guy, and he's just so much fun to be around. He's so positive and he's all over the place. He's just so passionate about what he does. I mean, honestly, I meet very few people that can express it. And there's a lot of people that are passionate, but they're quiet. Bill is he's just a wonderful person to be around.
Oh, you see, I think you've hit something really interesting there, Zeno. That communication of fishing, because my job entails, writing, photographing, communicating, whatever it may be. And I reckon I can fish all right. I know my strengths and weaknesses. But I I know and or I fish with some people who are just much better anglers than me. I've fished with a few people over the years who I honestly, it staggers me how good they are. But I find with some people who, I don't know, the local lads especially, some of them, they almost don't know. They don't realize how much they know because everything they do is so natural to them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. And then they can't. So naturally, then they can't really communicate what they're doing because it's so normal. Whereas to me, I'm going, oh my God, that's amazing what you're doing. Oh, geez, you're tying that knot. You're doing this with a washing line for mullets. I'm going, holy cow, my whole world's changed. And he's going, oh, I've been doing this for 20 years. And it fascinates me, the levels of knowledge and the communication of it. And how often you said about a quiet guy, it's often I find the quieter people in the background, the quieter anglers, they're the ones I want to talk to because they know their shit like it's going out of fashion.
Well, okay, let me blow your mind for a second, right? So you're standing on a rock, there's 3 of you, and a guy walks in, right? And the guy suddenly starts doing what you're doing, but the other 2 guys on the other sides are not doing it. And at the end of the night, like, this is Steve's story. He's like, how did you know what he's doing? He goes, well, you can see the bail, right? So he would cast, and I would count in my head how many seconds until his lure hit the water. And then I knew exactly how far was he casting. And when he would put a light to unhook his fish, I would see what kind of lures he was using. So he gave me the distance and he gave me the lure. He doesn't need to give me anything else. You and I probably just looking at the guy going like, why is he catching all the fish? Where he is mathematically working a formula in his head. So I'm saying it takes a special person to look at life like that. And he's not doing it for any other reason than to just catch fish because he's there.
And like I said, they don't realize that what they know or what they're doing is anything special.
Right.
And they actually, I think a lot of these guys, they have hugely, they may have, like I know a lot of local anglers I fished with for years and years and years. They didn't have particularly amazing educations or anything, but their analytical abilities and the way they think things through. And I asked these question, and I get an answer. It's just like, oh my God, it's so obvious.
I think the fascinating part is that we've been going at this for most of our lives, so we still feel like there's so much there that we should have to learn.
Oh, 100%. Look. Every day, it's not bullshit either. Every time I go fishing, something happens. And I think, geez, I'm not even a day one yet. And especially with lure fishing for bass, because you get these kind of grizzled old bass anglers who've been doing it since before they were born, and they're such experts they've forgotten more than I'll ever know. I haven't, I've come to this relatively late in my fishing life, so it's a whole kind of discovery thing, and I hope and think I'm very open-minded. I think my work and my sort of travel around the world has forced me to be open. I love learning. I was at school. I wasn't interested in anything apart from women, rugby, cricket, and drums, and booze. Actually, a lot of booze.
I do too. So we got 2 things in common.
I gave up drinking when I was 18 because I had enough.
Yeah.
So
it's funny how now, in Europe by 18 you're done. In the United States, like they waited till 21 to go to the bar. We're like 21. I am already dry by then. Are you kidding me?
Look, Jenna, I went to boarding school. I seriously had enough to last me a lifetime. So that was me. That was me done with alcohol. But and I didn't want to learn about business studies or maths or some rubbish like that. But now, I'm learning every single day about fishing, and it fries my. I'm 48 years old, and fries my brain. I love it.
How many countries did you surf fish in?
What? Oh, well, a lot. Look, a lot of my travel has been photographing saltwater fly fishing,
right?
Or freshwater fly fishing. Whether it's steelhead in British Columbia or whether it's GTs on the flats in the Seychelles.
I gotta do that.
It's insane. But I'm not really. I'm a crap fly fisherman. Make no mistake. but I think I'm all right at photography. So I've done. I hope I am. So I've done a lot of work taking photographs of this fishing. It's almost better to watch it because it's so freaking insane to see these fish get so angry and come at a fly so hard. I've seen a client literally freeze solid. The guy's going strike, strike, strike with this rampaging giant trevally, and this bloke's just going. You can't move. So it's cool. But actual surf casting abroad, I don't know. I've done some of your striped bass fishing. I'd like to do a lifetime of that. I've done a bit of would you call it surf casting up and down the east coast of Florida? Sort of bass that kind of stuff.
That's cool.
Really, I mean, but I'm dying to go back there.
I know that's a beautiful. Place.
I've done a lot actually. I forget. I've done a bit in South Africa. I love Africa. I've done a lot, and I've done a lot. I got very lucky very early in my sort of fishing because I used to make these stupid TV programs. For some reason, I got asked to present these fishing programs on TV many years ago, which I've been apologizing for ever since. But I got the opportunity to go and do a lot of, I suppose you would call it, surf casting for sharks off the beach in Namibia.
Okay.
Which is Southwest Africa. So you fish for these bronze sharks. It was insane. Jesus, when I first went and did that, so I didn't sleep for the entire flight. I was like a freaking nut. And then I got food poisoning with some rancid goat. So by the time I got,
that sounds terrible.
Yeah. So this is my first time in Africa, and I have wound myself up about these fish, these sharks. I literally, it was like I was on speed. I can remember standing on the beach, literally holding this rod, 14-foot rod. The guide's cast out because they cast this weird way with his weird, and I am standing there, literally shaking. And then I see some bloke down the beach hook a shark, and I get even more. And then a shark hits me. I swear to you, I was gone. I was gone in the head for about 3 days. But then again, these sharks are cool. They almost get too big. I mean, sometimes you're fighting these freaking things for an hour and a half, and your back's hurting. I used to smoke back then. I had a way of, the shark was running 200 yards. I could lock the rod off in the crook of my arm.
I remember those days. I
could roll a cigarette and I could smoke it, have a break, and then play the fish. But actually, it got to the point where the sharks were so big and so powerful, I actually started to enjoy the kind of the edible, the smaller species more that were more manageable.
Right. I tell you what, I'm going to make you a deal. You got to figure out how to bucktails work in UK, and then you're going to come back to tell us about it.
Oh yeah, you have got me thinking a lot. You have made a lot more sense about bucktails than anyone else I've heard. So it's really got me thinking.
But listen, we can do this offline. We don't have to do everything on a podcast. If you ever have a question, we'll just do a Zoom call. You can pick my brain. I don't really care.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's really
Listen, thank you so much for doing this. And I'm going to put the link to your website in the show notes. I do appreciate giving us a little bit of a different point of view on fishing, for the same species, literally just on the other side of the world.
Look, Zeno, seriously, thank you for having me. Like I said, I've got 50,000 questions. I'd love to ask all you guys about striped bass fishing, but thank you for having me. Seriously.
Like I said, you can come another time, and we're gonna turn the tables, and you're gonna be the host, and I'm just gonna sit here and answer them. Sounds wonderful,
Hey, cool. As long as I can get the software sorted, thank you very much.
All right, listen, it was a pleasure. Okay.
Cheers, Zeno.